I'm glad these Vegas shows are done. I'm gonna have to tell the Colonel I can't do this no more.
50 years. That's how long the world has waited to say goodbye to Elvis Presley properly. Now the countdown has a face, and it belongs to his granddaughter. Riley Keough never asked for this. She built her own name in film, her own career, her own quiet life. But grief doesn't care about plans. When her mother, Lisa Marie, passed away in January of 2023, everything changed. Overnight, Riley became the owner of Graceland, the keeper of a legacy bigger than one family could carry. So how does a woman who avoided the spotlight lead the biggest tribute in Elvis history? Can a fractured family really come together after everything they've been through? And what happens when the whole world is watching to see if she fails? The 50th anniversary is closing in. August of 2027. Riley is about to find out what that really costs her. The granddaughter, who never wanted the crown, this Los Angeles 2015, a film premiere, cameras flashing. Riley Keough walks the carpet in a plain black dress. No diamonds, no tribute to her grandfather stitched into the outfit. Just an actress doing press for a movie she believes in. That was the plan. Build a career. Stay out of the Presley story. For years, it worked. Riley grew up mostly outside the spotlight. Her mother, Lisa Marie Presley, carried the weight of being Elvis's only child. Riley watched that weight up close. She saw what fame cost, so she chose something different for herself. She trained as an actress, took small roles first, built her name slowly, the hard way, through independent films most people had never heard of. By the time she landed the lead in Daisy Jones and the Six, critics stopped calling her Elvis's granddaughter in every headline. They just called her a talented actress. That shift mattered to her more than people realized. Here's the question though. Can you really outrun a legacy like that? In 2015, Riley married stuntman Ben Smith Peterson. Quiet ceremony, no red carpet, just family. 7 years later, in August of 2022, they welcomed a daughter, Tupelo, through surrogate. The public didn't even know about it. Riley kept it private, the way she'd kept most of her life private, until Lisa Marie mentioned it at a memorial service months later. That memorial changed everything. January 2023. Lisa Marie Presley dies suddenly at 54 from complications tied to a bowel obstruction. The news breaks fast. Tributes pour in from every corner of the music world. But behind the public grief, something else was happening, a transfer of weight, from mother to daughter, from one generation of the Presley family to the next. Riley wasn't just losing her mother, she was inheriting an empire. Under the terms of the family trust, Riley became the sole owner of Graceland. Every room, every hallway, every artifact inside it. She also inherited a 15% stake in Elvis Presley Enterprises, the company that controls her grandfather's name, image, and legacy worldwide. Think about that for a second. 1 month, she's a working actress raising a newborn. Next, she's responsible for one of the most visited homes in America. No transition period, no warning. Friends close to Riley have said she wasn't prepared for the scale of it. Not the legal side, not the public side, not the sheer number of people suddenly looking to her for answers about her grandfather's future. And almost immediately, the first crack appeared. Priscilla Presley, Riley's grandmother, challenged parts of Lisa Marie's estate. The dispute became public. Headlines speculated about a rift between Priscilla and Riley, just months after they had buried Lisa Marie together. For a family already grieving, it was brutal timing. So, did Riley fight back? Did she dig in? Not exactly. According to reports, both sides worked toward a resolution, rather than dragging it through years of public litigation. A settlement was reached privately. Details were never fully disclosed. Riley has since spoken about her bond with Priscilla in warmer terms, describing a relationship built on real affection despite the legal mess. That doesn't erase what happened, but it does show something about how Riley operates. She protects the family even when the family makes it hard. That instinct would matter more than anyone realized, because Graceland isn't just a house, it's a business, a tourist destination, a brand worth protecting and, more importantly, worth growing. Elvis Presley. Enterprises brings in millions every year, driven by tours, merchandise, licensing deals, and Elvis Week, the annual gathering that draws fans from around the world to Memphis every August. Riley now sits at the center of all of it, not as a figurehead, as the actual owner. Sources close to the estate say she's never had to take an acting job purely for a paycheck since inheriting her position. The estate simply generates enough. That's the financial side of the story. The harder side is personal. Picture it. You spend your whole adult life trying to be known for your own work, your own choices. Then, almost overnight, you become the person controlling your grandfather's entire legacy. Every decision now carries his name. Every choice gets measured against what he would have wanted, or what fans think he would have wanted. That's not a job description, that's a daily negotiation with a ghost. Riley has reportedly leaned on people close to Elvis Presley Enterprises to help manage the business side, including longtime managing partner Joel Weinshanker. But the final say, the public face, increasingly falls to her. And now, with the 50th anniversary of Elvis's death approaching in August of 2027, that pressure isn't slowing down. It's accelerating. Because this isn't a normal year at Graceland. This is the year the whole world turns its attention back to Elvis, all at once, watching to see how his family honors him. So, here's the real question hanging over this section. Riley built a career avoiding the family spotlight. Now she's about to stand directly inside it, for the biggest Elvis moment in half a century. Is she ready for that? Her actions over the past year suggest she's trying to be. She's stayed involved with new projects tied to her grandfather's legacy. She remained present for family events with Priscilla and her half-siblings, twins Finley and Harper, even after the estate dispute. But readiness and willingness aren't the same thing. One insider close to the family summed it up simply. It's a lot to juggle. That much, at least, isn't in dispute. What is in dispute still is whether the family that surrounds Riley can actually hold together under that pressure. Because inheriting Graceland was only the beginning. The anniversary is coming, and it's going to test every relationship Riley has spent years trying to protect. A family divided by grief. A courtroom in Los Angeles, spring of 2023. Lisa Marie Presley had been gone for barely 2 months, and already her mother and her daughter were on opposite sides of a legal filing. That's not a rumor. That's what actually happened. Priscilla Presley challenged parts of Lisa Marie's trust, the very document that named Riley as successor trustee and heir to Graceland. The claim raised questions about how and when the trust had been changed, years before Lisa Marie's death. For a family that had just buried its matriarch, the timing felt almost cruel. So how does a grandmother end up in legal opposition to her own granddaughter, weeks after a funeral? Grief does strange things to families. It doesn't always bring people closer. Sometimes it exposes the cracks that were already there, just below the surface. Priscilla and Lisa Marie had a complicated history long before any of this. Priscilla married Elvis when she was barely out of her teens. She raised Lisa Marie largely on her own after the divorce, and later, largely from a distance, as Lisa Marie's adult life grew more turbulent. By the time Lisa Marie died, mother and daughter had been through decades of closeness and distance in equal measure. Riley grew up watching that dynamic. She loved her grandmother. She loved her mother. She never expected to be caught between them, after both were supposed to be past the hardest part. But that's exactly what happened. The dispute became public fast. Entertainment outlets ran headline after headline about a Presley family rift. Words like battle and fight got attached to two women who had just lost the same person. Here's where the story could have gone one of two ways. It could have dragged into years of litigation, the kind that empties trust funds and burns relationships to the ground, or it could have ended quickly, privately, before it did permanent damage. It ended quickly. Within months, Priscilla and Riley reached a settlement. The exact terms were never made fully public. No courtroom drama, no prolonged media circus. Just a quiet resolution between two women who, whatever their disagreements, still shared the same loss. That's the part most headlines skipped over, because after the settlement, something shifted. Riley began speaking about Priscilla differently, warmer, more protective. She's described their bond as one built on real love, not just family obligation. Actions matter more than statements here, though. And the clearest sign of repair came later, when Priscilla herself let something slip. September of 2025, Priscilla mentioned almost in passing that Riley and her husband had welcomed a second child. Months had already gone by. The public had no idea. The baby's sex and name still aren't known. Think about what that means. If the relationship between Riley and Priscilla were still broken, would Priscilla even have that information to share? Probably not. That's the first micro loop answered. Did the estate dispute permanently fracture the family? Not based on what's followed since. But estate money wasn't the only thing pulling at this family. There was also Riley's daughter, Tupelo, born via surrogate in August of 2022, and kept almost entirely private until Lisa Marie mentioned her at a memorial gathering. Riley didn't hide her daughter out of shame. She hid her out of protection. She'd watched her own mother live a childhood under constant public attention. She wasn't interested in repeating that pattern. That instinct, protect first, explain later, runs through almost everything Riley has done since inheriting Graceland. It explains why she settled with Priscilla quietly instead of fighting publicly. It explains why so little is known about her second child. And it explains the tension that's been building around her half-siblings, twins Finley and Harper, now 17 years old. Finley and Harper are Lisa Marie's youngest children, born years after Riley. They grew up mostly out of the spotlight too, shielded by their mother for as long as she could manage it. Their mother is gone now, and the anniversary approaching in August of 2027 means the world's attention is about to land on them, whether they're ready or not. Sources close to the family say Riley intends to bring both Priscilla and the twins into the anniversary events, not as background figures, as active participants in honoring Elvis together. That's a bigger ask than it sounds, because bringing this particular family together in front of cameras means asking Priscilla and Riley to stand shoulder to shoulder after a lawsuit. It means asking two teenagers who've barely lived a public life to suddenly become part of one of the most watched entertainment stories of the year. One insider close to the family put it plainly: Riley is going to do her part to lead the family in celebrating Elvis's legacy, and she's going to bring her grandmother and her half-siblings along for the ride. That's the plan, at least. Whether it holds together under real pressure is a different question entirely, because grief doesn't stay resolved just because a settlement got signed. It resurfaces, usually at the worst possible moment, usually in front of the exact audience a family was hoping to avoid. August of 2027 isn't just an anniversary, it's a stage. Cameras, journalists, millions of fans watching every gesture, every seating arrangement, every joint appearance for signs of tension. If there's still resentment simmering underneath the surface, that's where it's most likely to show. So here's the second loop worth holding on to. Everyone close to this family insists the relationships have healed, but healed relationships get tested differently than broken ones. They get tested in public, under a spotlight, with no room for a quiet, private resolution. Riley has already proven she can navigate one legal crisis without letting it destroy her family. The estate settlement showed that. What she hasn't had to prove yet is whether that same family can stand together for an entire year of public tribute, interviews, and ceremony without the old cracks reopening. That test starts now. Because while Riley was busy repairing what grief had broken, the anniversary itself kept moving closer. Plans were already forming behind the scenes. A documentary, a year of programming at Graceland, an entire calendar built around one date in August, and that's where the real pressure begins. The Weight of August 16. Memphis, February of 2026. A theater fills up for a premiere, not a blockbuster, a documentary. Baz Luhrmann, the director behind the 2022 Elvis biopic, unveils a new film. Epic, Elvis Presley in concert, never-before-seen footage, restored audio. Elvis, young and alive on stage, projected larger than life for an audience that never got to see him perform in person. It's a preview of something bigger, much bigger, because that documentary isn't a standalone project. It's the opening note of a full year building toward one date, August 16th, 2027. 50 years since Elvis Presley died at Graceland, at just 42 years old. So, what does 50 years actually mean for a legacy like this? For most public figures, anniversaries fade a little more with each passing decade. Attention thins out, crowds shrink. But Elvis has never followed that pattern. If anything, interest in him has grown, pulled forward by new generations discovering him through film, through streaming documentaries, through the same songs their grandparents grew up on. Joel Weinshanker, the managing partner at Elvis Presley Enterprises, confirmed just how far the plans extend. He told local Memphis press that Graceland is preparing a full year-long slate of programming, not a single weekend event. Think about the scale of that. Concerts, exhibits, screenings, fan gatherings stretched across 12 straight months, all funneling toward one single day in August. And standing at the center of all of it is Riley. This isn't the same as attending Elvis Week as a family member, the way she has in years past. This is different. This is Riley, as the person ultimately responsible for how the world remembers her grandfather 50 years later. That's an enormous amount of pressure to carry. But here's the real question worth sitting with. What happens if it doesn't go the way everyone's hoping? Elvis Week already draws enormous crowds to Memphis every August. Fans fly in from across the world. Hotels fill up months in advance. Graceland itself becomes something closer to a pilgrimage site than a museum for that stretch of days. Now, multiply that by 50, by the emotional weight of a milestone number, by a media environment that moves faster and hungrier than it did even 10 years ago. One misstep, one badly handled moment, and it won't stay contained to Memphis. It'll be everywhere within hours. Sources close to the family describe Riley as someone determined to get this right. Not flashy, not overproduced. A source close to the planning described it simply. In some ways, the celebration has already begun. That's true. Between the documentary and the early programming announcements, 2027 has effectively started early. The countdown clock is already running, months ahead of the actual date. But determination and preparation aren't guarantees, and that's where the tension really sits. Because this isn't just about ticket sales or documentary premieres. It's about a family still working through its own grief, being asked to perform that grief publicly, on command, for an entire year. Riley has spent years protecting her private life. Her daughter kept out of the headlines for months after birth. Her second child, still barely acknowledged publicly. Her own marriage, kept low-key since 2015. Now, she's stepping directly into the brightest spotlight the Elvis legacy has seen in decades. So, here's where the second macro loop tightens. Can someone who has spent her adult life avoiding exposure actually lead the most exposed year of her grandfather's legacy? There's reason to think she can. Riley has already proven, through the estate settlement with Priscilla, that she knows how to manage a crisis without letting it spiral. She kept that fight out of court, out of the tabloids, resolved quietly within months. But an anniversary like this doesn't offer that kind of privacy. There's no keeping it quiet. There's no settling it behind closed doors. Every appearance, every joint interview with Priscilla, every moment involving Finley and Harper will happen directly in front of an audience. And the stakes go beyond family harmony. There's real money attached to this too. Elvis Presley Enterprises generates the bulk of its revenue through tourism, merchandise, and licensing, all of it tied directly to public perception of the estate. Get the anniversary right, and interest in Elvis surges for another generation. Get it wrong, and the cracks the family works so hard to hide become the story instead. That's the trade Riley signed up for the moment she accepted her role as trustee. So, as August 16th, 2027 creeps closer, one thing is becoming clear. This isn't just a tribute anymore. It's a test of the family, of the business, and most of all, of Riley herself. The documentary was only the beginning. What comes next determines whether 50 years of Elvis Presley's legacy gets honored the way his family always hoped, or whether old wounds find their way back into the spotlight right when the whole world is watching. 2 teenagers, 1 legacy, a backyard in Calabasas. No cameras, no press list, just a birthday party like 1,000 other 17th birthdays happening across the country that same week. Except this one belongs to Finley and Harper Lockwood. Most people couldn't pick them out of a crowd. That's exactly how their mother wanted it. Lisa Marie Presley raised her youngest children largely away from the spotlight that had followed her since birth. She'd lived that exposure firsthand, and she knew what it cost. So Finley and Harper grew up mostly unseen, tucked into a life that looked, from the outside, almost ordinary. That protection ended the moment their mother did. January of 2023. Lisa Marie dies suddenly, and two teenage girls, barely into their teens at the time, are thrust into a family story bigger than anything they'd been prepared for. So, who steps in to guide them through that? Riley does. Their older half-sister, 20-some years apart in age, suddenly responsible not just for Graceland, but for two grieving kids who just lost their mother. That's not a role anyone rehearses for. Riley had her own daughter to raise at the time, an infant born just months before Lisa Marie's death. Now she was also stepping in as a steadying presence for Finley and Harper, on top of managing an estate dispute with her grandmother. 3 separate crises, all landing in the same year. Here's where the family could have splintered further. Grief has a way of pulling people apart when they need each other most. Instead, by most accounts, Riley pulled the family closer. She's spoken about wanting to protect her siblings the same way she protects her own children. Not with statements to the press, with action. Keeping them largely out of interviews, letting them grow up outside the story, even as the story kept growing around them. But 2027 changes that equation, because Riley isn't planning a quiet, private anniversary. Sources close to the family say she intends to bring both Priscilla and the twins into the actual events marking 50 years since Elvis's death. Think about what that means for two 17-year-olds who've spent their whole lives avoiding this exact kind of attention. One insider, close to the planning, put it directly. Riley is going to bring her grandmother and her half-siblings along for the ride. That's a generous way of framing it. Here's the harder way. Two teenagers, with almost zero public experience, are about to be introduced to the world during the single most scrutinized year in their grandfather's legacy. So, here's the question worth sitting with. Are they actually ready for that? There's no clean answer yet. Finley and Harper haven't given interviews. They haven't stepped in front of cameras the way Riley has, across years of film premieres and press tours. Whatever comes in 2027 will likely be their first real experience with that kind of scrutiny. Compare that to Riley's own path. She spent close to a decade building comfort with public life before she ever had to represent the Presley name in an official capacity. Small roles first. Independent films most people never saw. A slow climb toward visibility, entirely on her own terms. Finley and Harper don't get that runway. They're stepping straight into the deep end, guided only by an older sister who's still finding her own footing in this role. That's not necessarily a bad thing. Riley knows exactly what that pressure feels like because she's living it herself in real time. If anyone can prepare two teenagers for it, it's someone who's currently learning the same lessons under the same spotlight. Still, there's a difference between being guided through pressure and actually being ready for it. And this is where the two macro loops running through this story start to connect. Can this family really hold together under public pressure? And can two of its youngest members handle the weight suddenly placed on them? The answer to both seems to depend entirely on Riley. She's already proven she can manage crises quietly through the estate settlement with Priscilla. She's already shown she protects her family first, explains later, whether that's keeping her own children out of headlines or shielding Finley and Harper from interviews for years. Now, she has to do something harder. She has to bring them forward, deliberately, into the exact kind of exposure she's spent years keeping them away from. There's no quiet option left. August 16th, 2027 is coming, and Graceland's year-long programming means the build-up starts long before that date actually arrives. Every family appearance between now and then becomes practice. Every joint outing with Priscilla, every early glimpse of Finley or Harper near the estate, gets read as a preview of how the real anniversary might unfold. Riley knows that. It's likely part of why she's easing the family into visibility gradually, rather than all at once. Whether that's enough time to prepare two teenagers for a 50th anniversary watched by millions is something nobody can answer yet. What's clear is this. The Presley family isn't just honoring Elvis in 2027. They're introducing the next generation to his legacy in public, under conditions none of them fully chose. And that reunion, the one bringing Priscilla, Riley, and the twins together for the first time on this scale, is where the real story is heading next. The reunion nobody saw coming, September of 2025. A casual comment, nothing planned, nothing staged. Priscilla Presley mentions, almost in passing, that Riley and her husband welcomed a second child months earlier. No press release. No announcement from Riley herself, just her grandmother letting it slip in conversation. Sit with that for a second. If this family were still as fractured as the headlines suggested back in 2023, would Priscilla even know that detail, let alone share it? Probably not. That single comment says more about the state of this family than any public statement could, and it sets up exactly what's coming as August 16th, 2027 gets closer. Because after 2 years of legal disputes, quiet settlements, and careful distance, the pieces are starting to move back toward each other. Riley has talked about her grandmother in noticeably different terms lately. Not guarded, not diplomatic. Warm. She's described their relationship as one rooted in real love, built over a lifetime, not erased by one lawsuit over a trust. That's not nothing. Families don't usually talk that way about people they're still at war with, and it lines up with something else. Reports from inside the estate planning describe Riley actively working to bring Priscilla into the 50th anniversary events, not sideline her, not manage her from a distance, include her. Same with Finley and Harper. The plan isn't to protect them by keeping them home. It's to bring them in gradually on Riley's terms, rather than let the moment happen to them without any preparation at all. So here's where the first macro loop finally closes. Can this family actually come together after everything they've been through? Based on where things stand now, yes. Not perfectly, not without scars, but genuinely. The settlement with Priscilla didn't just end a lawsuit. It seems to have cleared space for something real to grow back. And 2 years later, a grandmother sharing family news, unprompted, is proof that space got used. That doesn't mean everything is simple from here. It never is with a family this public, carrying a legacy this large. There's still the second loop, the one about Finley and Harper. 2 teenagers, about to step into public life at exactly the moment the entire world is watching Graceland closest. Riley can't control every part of how that goes. Nobody can. But she can control how they're introduced to it. Slowly, with family around them, rather than thrown in front of cameras alone. That's the version of leadership she's chosen, consistently, since the day she inherited this role. Protect first. Prepare carefully. Let the public in only when it's on her terms. It's worked so far. The estate dispute was resolved quietly. Her children stayed out of headlines for as long as she could manage it. Even the documentary rollout in February of 2026 came without controversy. Just genuine excitement from fans getting new footage of Elvis they'd never seen. Small proof, piece by piece, that Riley knows how to handle pressure without letting it break the people around her. Now comes the biggest test of all, a full year of programming at Graceland. A documentary is already building momentum, a managing partner confirming on record that this anniversary is being treated as something historic, not routine. And at the center of it, a granddaughter who spent years trying to build a life outside her grandfather's shadow, now standing directly beneath it by choice for the sake of her family. There's something almost poetic in that. Riley didn't want the crown. She said so in 100 small decisions, for 100 small moments across her 20s. And yet, here she is, not just wearing it, but trying to make sure the whole family gets to wear it together. August 16th, 2027 is still months away. Plenty can still shift between now and then. Plans change. Family dynamics move in ways nobody predicts. But if the last 2 years are any indication, this isn't a family sleepwalking toward disaster. It's a family that's already been tested once, hard, and came out the other side closer than anyone expected. Priscilla and Riley, once on opposite sides of a courtroom, now sharing quiet family updates like the lawsuit never happened. Finley and Harper, once kept almost entirely hidden, now being gradually introduced to the legacy their mother spent her whole life carrying. And Riley, once the granddaughter who wanted nothing to do with any of it, now the one holding all the pieces together. 50 years after Elvis Presley's death, his family isn't just planning a tribute. They're proving something. That grief didn't win. That the lawsuit didn't win. That whatever came apart in the days after Lisa Marie's death has, slowly and quietly, been put back together. Whether that holds under the full weight of a global anniversary, nobody can say for certain yet. But for the first time in years, this family isn't bracing for a fight. They're getting ready to stand together. 50 years is a long time to carry someone's memory. But Riley Keough isn't carrying it alone anymore. What started as a lawsuit, a grieving family pulled apart, has slowly become something else. A reunion, a shared purpose. A granddaughter who never wanted the spotlight, now standing in it, with her grandmother and her siblings beside her. August 16th, 2027, will tell the rest of the story. Until then, one thing feels certain. Elvis Presley's legacy isn't just surviving through his music, it's surviving through his family, however imperfect, however hard-won. If this story moved you, hit subscribe, turn on notifications so you never miss an update as the anniversary gets closer. We'll be here, following every step.